Creaso everybody, for another video on how to fix 5e. I know I said I was done with the game, but I'm never done with anything I think I can fix. Consider it another glaring symptom of my morbid obsession with absolute flawlessness. For those that clicked because of the thumbnail, you're probably wondering what Rod Serling and the main man have to do with any of this. Well, stay tuned and you will soon find out. I get inspiration from many sources, and once the voices in my head are screaming loud enough to get their message out that I can no longer ignore them, I have to make a ruminations video. That's how the process works. This time the topic is exploration and why it's seriously not fun. Fifth is based on the flawed three-pillar system, the three pillars being combat, interaction, and exploration. There's actually two additional pillars, but I'm not going to talk about those until later. I should say it would be a three-pillar system if they actually had made exploration challenging. That's the problem. Exploration isn't challenging. There's little in the way of discovery, the way the rules are written, and most of the things you will discover are done automatically. You will casually pick up clues as you walk by like they were quarters on the floor because of the passive perception rules. Hex crawls only get exciting when the party hits a labeled area and something is pre-programmed. Or the DM notices that everyone is staring at their phones and decides to hit them with blink honey badgers to make the game interesting. If you're a dungeon master and your great dungeon you've spent hours on suddenly has almost all the traps rendered harmless because one player will notice them all without a roll, you know the feeling. To summarize the problem, first go out and watch the Twilight Zone episode, A Nice Place to Visit. It's 25 minutes long, and you will thank me later. For those at work, I shall summarize. A 2-bit thug tries to rob a pawn shop and gets shot dead by the police. He wakes up in the afterlife with an angel welcoming him. He's in a ritzy hotel, and his every whim is catered to. Women throw themselves at him. He can beat any man in a fight. He makes a fortune at the casinos. He's absolutely thrilled at his eternal reward. Only he discovers he can't lose. Every poker hand is a royal flush, every slot machine pull is a jackpot, every craps roll is a 7. He can bed any woman without trying. Any woman, just by approaching her. After a month he's fed up with always knowing the outcome of anything he tries, even if he's always successful. He begs the angel to get him out of heaven. The angel then asks, "What made you think this is heaven?" That episode personifies one of my core beliefs in game design. If there's no threat of failure, there's no thrill in success. Exploration is too easy for players. Thus, there's no thrill for them surviving or solving a mystery. A few easily acquired feats, abilities, or features have eliminated most, if not all, challenges in that category. Imagine if you were handed the Killinator 9000, an auto-tracking Vorpal Sword of Slaying. Every hit kills, no matter the creature. Kobolds, vampires, golems, gods, great old ones, cold fronts, high tides, the Appalachians. All of them dead on the first hit, and you can never miss. Combat would become very dull very quickly. For a persuasion example, you don't have to look further than the literary masterpiece, Lobo's Blazing Chain of Love. Lobo, aka the main man, the last Zarnian, Grandmaster Fraga, the Scourge of the Cosmos, Mr. Machete, or he who devours your entrails and thoroughly enjoys it, gets hired to track down a prostitute who owes somebody money. The only problem is she's now in a harem where the Sultan-type guy enjoys his new wife for a night, then discards her into his private garden and gets a new wife. Lobo enters the garden and immediately seduces the first woman he meets without effort, then the second, the third, the 200th. All of his conquests have rendered him numb from the waist down and in need of a walker. What started out as a thrill became a running joke and fell into tedium. Why roll the dice if success is guaranteed? Before I fix exploration, I must explain what it entails and what's wrong with it. I'm dealing with several aspects of what I call exploration: crawling, investigation, and survival. Any encounter dealing with exploration can have any of these in any combination, just a single aspect, or possibly all three. Crawling is your standard go into a new area, searching for everything of value, and go to the next square. Investigation is finding something of interest and figuring out what the significance is. Survival is trying to stay alive in a new region where you'll probably scrounge for food and other supplies. If you're in a dungeon looking for loot, you probably won't need the rules for survival. If you need to get in and out of a building to find a specific clue, then the mystery aspect is all you need. And if you're trapped in the Arctic and need to find a way home, you need survival. Now, if you have to get the clue in a lost temple in the Arctic, you're going to need all three. And if done right, all at the same time. But then you get to the rules on exploration and survival in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and you find out why many people consider that book the weakest of all the versions across the editions. First up, you've got passive perception. If the difficulty to spot something is equal to or less than 10 plus your wisdom modifier plus your proficiency bonus, you automatically pass. Worse, it's easy to get this up to ridiculous levels. A rogue or a cleric with the right skills can easily get their passive perception to 15 at level 1. If feats are allowed, you can take the observant feat and gain an additional +5 to the passive check. This means they can automatically spot any hidden items that are hard difficulty or less before you've even described the scene. Your options are then to make the DC to find every secret door, trap, and clue at least the second highest difficulty on the chart, or watch as a player thwarts any danger or mystery to your dungeon without rolling dice. You could single out that player, or players in case there's a backup, to make it difficult specifically for them, but then you get rightly called out for singling somebody out for abuse. But if you do take that option, and then if the character, for whatever reason, isn't present when the challenge appears, then the difficulty is damn near off the charts and nobody else has a hope to pass the check. It can be frustrating to challenge players because of this. Look at the 5th edition Tomb of Horrors. None of the dozen or so perception checks have a difficulty greater than 20. That's not to say you automatically spot all the traps. This module was written by Gygax, after all. Some traps can't be detected, only their aftermath. But a passive perception of 20 is easy to hit, especially at the recommended level. The suggested level for the module is levels 11 to 14. So with expertise for the rogue, that's +8 off the bat, +10 if you're level 13 or higher. Grab a wisdom modifier of +2, which isn't hard by that level, and you'll spot every trap. Add observant, and your passive will be 25, which spots every trap, ambush, and secret that isn't done by the gods. I would say that that's a broken build, but it's not. It's a common sense approach to be wary of your surroundings. But your DM's inner monologue while he struggles to figure out how to challenge you isn't going to be pleasant. Now, you could rewrite the rules yourself, tweaking the game to fix the glaring issue. But that should have already been done for you. That should have been caught during playtest. That's why you're watching this video, because I've done the work and I'm passing it on to you. Ditch passive perception altogether and its sister, passive insight. They're no longer in the game. Stealing from older editions and other games, we now have 3 categories: obvious, concealed, and hidden. Obvious items are things that you will spot immediately on a cursory search. There's no effort to hide them, but the players still need an action to go through the motions. The clue might be in a stack of papers on a desk, but you still have to go through the pile of documents to find the right one. Everybody says what they're searching for, and if they search the right place, they find the item, no check needed. Concealed means the owners have put an effort to hide it, but not through extraordinary measures. A door behind a bookcase is concealed, so is a key under a pillow. This will require a check, but the check is typically medium or lower difficulty. The check takes about a minute, and the people must declare what they're searching for. Hidden means it is not apparent even if you look right at it. Think the bookcase in Young Frankenstein. Players will need to toss the room to find these items or gimmicks. Still use a perception check, but it will take a minimum of 10 minutes to find it, and they will be loud. There's no quietly pulling a desk away from a wall to search for hidden panels. You can search quietly, but that will take at least 30 minutes to an hour. Having said that, use the lucky bastard rule, where a nat 20 finds what they were looking for in one action. The paladin leans on the hidden button. The rogue happens to open straight to the page they needed to read, or the cleric spots the tripwire right as they're about to step on it. Now, the players will still have to roll to find things. You can't game the system, but you can start hiding things again. Change the observant passive perception bonus to a flat +5 when using the appropriate skills to compensate. That's the first problem dealt with. Now on to the mystery problem. This one is solved by breaking up the skills needed for the mystery section, depending on what the clue is related to. You can make this challenging with a few common sense tweaks. First, use national languages for all communication in your game. I have Common as a trade tongue. It's not a written language. It's based on a written language, but reading a letter in the base language is like reading Spanish, but all you know is how to order a beer. So if the party has to find a letter from the Minrathad ambassador and discover his plans, one of the party had better speak Minrathadian. Sure, the wizard can cast comprehend languages, but nobody ever memorizes that. A ritual takes a minute involving verbal components. And then it's useless if it's written in code, or the party can't touch the thing they need to read. As a general rule, never let Common replace other languages. I would say if you didn't speak an actual language, the maximum you can score on any skill requiring a spoken word is a 15, so medium difficulty or lower. Otherwise, you can't communicate the message clearly. Romanos eunt domus and all that. Then you can use other skills to solve the mystery by taking it out of just the perception skill, and you've given them a challenge. A good example is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Pick the right grail, or else. The grails are classified as obvious. They're not hidden at all. But there's dozens of them. Perception doesn't apply here. but you can make a religion check to find the answer. Or the James Bond movie Diamonds Are Forever. Figure out who the assassin is by realizing one of the statements he just said is incorrect, because the person he's posing as would know better. In this case, it's a waiter who got his types of wines mixed up. So a party member with the cooking proficiency could spot this mess up. Make the clue obvious, but only to people who know what they're looking for. You reward players for taking specific backgrounds or having different tool proficiencies by allowing their knowledge in those fields to solve the issue immediately. A fighter with the soldier background will know immediately if someone who has never put on a uniform before is impersonating a military officer just by how they're wearing their medals. A friend of mine who did his 20 in the Navy spotted an imposter because the Stolen Valor Grisfarb got his timeline for his A school very wrong. Luke wasn't even looking at the guy, he just overheard his conversation from across the room. You allow your players to do that, and they will brag about it later. Now we come to the survival aspect of 5th, which is the one with the most problems and the hardest to fix. Survival is about asset management, and this edition does not do bookkeeping very well. If the party is going to traverse the wilds, they need sustenance, shelter, and equipment. Run out of food, and you starve. If you can't find shelter, you die from exposure. Lose your equipment, and you aren't climbing that cliff face. Fortunately, a ranger ignores many of these without rolling. You can pass through difficult terrain without even slowing down. You can never get lost, even if you're in unfamiliar territory. Shipwreck on the Isle of Dread? No problem, you'll have us home for supper. You gain double the food on a foraging check, and those aren't hard to begin with. But you don't even need a ranger when it comes to survival. That's why you have spells. Trapped in the desert with no oasis in sight? Goodberry. First level spell that feeds 10 people that doesn't require a material component to be expended, and gives everybody a full day's supply of nourishment. And if you're a non-spell casting type, just grab it with the Feat Magic Initiate, and you never have to worry about eating again. It's a broken spell for what it does. I suggest banning it entirely from the game. Still, if you haven't run a survival game where the party was able to make it across the desert for 2 weeks surviving on nothing but Goodberry, you can always make the material component cost gold so they can't just arcane focus it or the equivalent. I suggest 10 gold pieces of casting, and it only provides food, not water. That requires the Create Water spell. So you have to spend 2 first level spells a day to negate a fundamental aspect of exploration completely. Goodberry is just one of the many culprits that negates exploration difficulties. Leoman's tiny hut, anyone? No need to set a watch, leave the dungeon, pitch camp, or do anything else to avoid interference. Just everybody climb into the tiny hut, no need to build a fire, and take a long rest back to full hit points. Yes, it's a higher level spell, but it's also a ritual. You aren't going to need to memorize this, and you don't cast it in combat. You just get to the end of the traveling day. Rather than face the oncoming blizzard by building an impromptu shelter, the wizard checks everybody into the tiny hut hotel, where the ranger casts Continental Goodberry breakfast. You've survived another night without worrying about wandering monsters, weather, temperature, or anything else that explorers might worry about. My solution? Turn to page 255 in the player's handbook, take a marker, and black out the entire spell. Ban it. Ban it completely. This bit of magic completely negates a massive element of the exploration element of D&D, with no drawbacks or penalties at all. It should have never gotten past playtesting. If you don't want to ban it, remove the ritual aspect and give it a material cost. You now have to memorize it, wasting a spell slot, and you better have a decent supply of crystal beads at the cost of 100 gold pieces of casting. Now that you've gotten rid of all the easy buttons, you will need players to pay attention, as they have to keep track of things. Survival is about resource management. They will need to remember how many arrows they have, because there are no fletchers in the Broken Lands, or trees, and probably no birds either. Fletching tools require materials. You can't make arrows out of snow or sand. And then there's the mending spell, so we have to address that. Actually, let's address the actual culprit, the component pouch or arcane focus. Since survival requires asset management, anything that provides infinite access ruins survival. And if it ruins an aspect of the game, it makes it not fun and thus has to go. Give the pouch and focus a number of uses equal to twice its cost in gold. Spend those uses, and the focus breaks or the pouch runs out. You can now use mending on all 20 of those arrows, but you've just used up your entire wand. Alright, back to the logistics part of exploration. You have to kick down the ranger just a hair. You still want them to be the apotheosis of cool in their chosen environment. God knows they need to be good at something, but no automatic successes. If they are in a region they are familiar with, or at least have a map and can identify landmarks, then yes, the no lost rule fully applies. But if they end up kidnapped and escape a jail cell in a distant land, they know which way is north, and that's it. For the foraging fix, every point above the DC number you roll, you gain an extra pound of food and gallon of water. Also, when the ranger gains a new favored terrain, increase the foraging die 1 step. So it's a D6 initially, then it becomes a D8, and then a D10. A low-level ranger will return with some blackberries and a surprise squirrel. A high-level ranger will have the party wake up to lobster thermidor aux crevettes with a mornay sauce garnished with a truffle pate, brandy, and a fried egg on top, and spam. If you want to go full in on better exploration and survival tips, go get the Wilderness and Dungeoneering survival guides from 1st edition. You can get physical copies for about $30. They were one of the biggest flops in D&D history, and they were wildly overprinted, which explains why the price is quite reasonable. Or just get a PDF for $10. Steal everything from them to make a hex crawl enjoyable. The section on Wilderness Adventure in the Dungeon Master's Guide is 5 pages, not counting a page of full-color art. The Wilderness Survival Guide is 24 times that. You don't have to go into that much detail when running Quagmire or Savage Coast, but it's nice to have a reference point if you want to surprise the party with a Haboob, a Chinook, or a derecho. Those are my suggestions for fixing exploration in 5th edition, mainly by making it a challenge again. 5th has a well-deserved reputation for being pillow-fisted, and easy access to magic is a major culprit. By making the game harder, you will improve it, and your players will thank you for it, at least the ones that didn't have their characters freeze to death last session. I wanted to know who wanted to see more videos like this, and the answer was surprising. Everyone! And Wizards, if you want to thank me for fixing your game, I accept cash payments, book deals, and the Mystara license.